Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Then he made the disciples get into the boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after doing so, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. And during the fourth watch of the night, he came towards them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said. And they cried out in fear. And at once, Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and he began to sink. And he cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand, caught him, and said to him, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Sisters and brothers, the gospel, the good news of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good evening, everybody. Always makes me laugh. So one of my favorite musicians is Rich Mullins, and my favorite CD of his, The Liturgy of Legacy and Ragamuffin Band, the very beginning of it starts with this little voice that is exactly how I feel right now, and it says, "Allow me to make this disclaimer, everybody. I'm barely ready to do this, but let's keep doing this, okay?" And then you hear Rich go, "Okay, all right, here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm still not ready. I don't think that we ever are ready. Peter wasn't ready to be called out onto the water, into the middle of a storm, into the middle of a raging sea. He wasn't ready for that. Wasn't ready for that experience. But we go where we're called. That's what we do. We go where we're called, and we drown. That's what happened. We went where he called, and he drowned. We all drown. So, right up at the very top of tonight, we're going to get some things out of the way. Those that know me, hi, I'm back. Those that don't, I've been gone for a long time. And so let's just say where I've been. In 2009, I started working here as the director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries. That same year, I got a divorce. And I felt like I failed. I didn't know what to do. I failed my kids, I failed my church, I failed my family. I failed God. I felt like I failed. I was completely overwhelmed. And on top of that failure, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. It was fear. I thought, are my 2 kids going to be okay? Will the church be okay? Will I still have a job? What's going to happen? Oh my gosh, they can't be okay with a youth minister who just got divorced. This is not going to happen. I just started here. I'm going to lose my entire job. This is kind of how I was going to pay for my food today. it was just completely overwhelming. And in the middle of that, I actually started to think, well, God still loved me. And after some time, friends and family, I thought I was starting to come up for air. My anxieties were proven false. The church loved me. God loved me. This community loved me. They supported me. They just held me in love. And I just can't be more grateful for that. It helped me heal. And part of that healing was finding what real love was. And I met it and understood. And she saved me. And I get to spend the rest of my life thanking her for that. And that's such a great joy. And so everything seemed like, okay, we're coming out. I can actually do this. I can walk on the water and then right back in again. As I think it happens, this is a cycle. It's going to happen once or twice. And it's different waters this time. So I had love. I wasn't going to lose it. Situations arose that we had to make a decision. And that was to keep family the priority. We had to make a tough decision. We were waiting for annulments, and yet my home wasn't whole. I hope nobody has to sit in that kind of situation where you're forced with a real choice. So we made the choice, not the easy decision, to get civilly married. And it was not to say we don't believe in the church tradition. We absolutely believe 100% in the grace that comes in the sacrament of marriage. But it was what we really felt that we had to do for the family. And it was a private decision. We needed to make it quietly, telling only family and a really close circle of friends. And in doing so, we learned that piety, though it's a wonderful virtue, if abused, can be very dangerous. And it could be harmful and hurtful. The two people that we thought were the closest, that should have been the closest, reported us to the bishop. And the bishop asked that Adel and I refrain from public ministry until the marriage got invalidated in the church. We did. And that's where I bit. So that was the journey that led to that time away. It led to being away from this ministry, this time, where it was, I loved it. I loved coming and leading music. So I loved coming and praying. I was able to still do that, but it was different. To not do the music, to not be a part of that, to not lead that. And it was another drowning. And we all have drownings in our life. I'm sure you can think of them, and they happen all the time. Cancer, depression, divorce, betrayal, a breakup, suffering, loss of a job, death. These are drownings. The times when the water takes over. And they happen, and life happens. And your drowning would be different. than mine, different than the next person next to you. But they're all drownings just the same. And when we drown, we need rescue. And it's taken me a long time to get out from under the water. And it's only because of people in my life that were willing to be the hand of Christ. To be a hand of Christ reaching down into the water. That I was able to do so. All of those people I mentioned, my parents, my family, my friends, this gospel community supported me. Tom, who at the time kind of knew each other. Really just barely. I had just kind of hired him to come up and speak at one of these things, and we didn't really know each other all that well. Tom gave up his last Wednesday of the month, every month, for 2 years now. Over 2 years. To come up here. It's almost been almost 3 years. To come up here and lead this time of prayer. In my place. And do that for me. I'm just so grateful. And Adel and I just thank God for Adel. We got to reach for each other's hand while we were reaching out for the hand of Christ. Pull him down through the water. And we learned that rescue is a journey. And the journey doesn't happen overnight. Every journey has a beginning, and when you're completely underwater, you can't see it, but that's the moment that you need to go find to allow that rescue to take root in your life, to start to begin that healing process. And it could be multiple different drownings in your life, but you got to find for that moment, you have to find that beginning point. Where was it? Where did rescue begin? And so I can go back now, and I can find mine. And I found it somewhere along that journey. And I can say that I had just started the job here, wanting to do well, wanting to make an impression. And every year, some of us from here go over to the LA Religious Education Conference. I was told that this was a part of my job responsibility that I go. Norbert. I didn't want to go. Everything at home was a mess. How am I going to go take 4 days to just go spend time in California? It wasn't going to, work. But he said it was a responsibility, and so I went. And he said, "Adam, you need it." And he had no clue how badly I needed it. He had no clue. And there I was walking the halls of the Anaheim Convention Center, these big, great halls. I'm chasing down musicians that I know and sticking a camera in their face, or chasing down an author that I know and sticking a camera in their face. Tom, I have that video somewhere. It's really funny. And I'm making them send little messages to the youth, and that was kind of how I was getting through it. I was just kind of working through it, running around trying to find these people. And I spotted a musician I recognized. I introduced myself to Trevor Thompson. I filmed a little video, and I was turning to walk away, and I'm literally going like this, and he goes, "Wait, are you okay?" Whoa, is it that obvious? What does that mean? Are you okay? Now, I'm a private person. I really am. This tonight has had me more nervous than I think most anything else around. I don't share a lot of this. I kind of walk this alone, and that's not always healthy, but it's just what I do, and I work on it. But for whatever reason, here I am, this very private person. I just met him. I had no idea who he is other than the fact that he wrote In This Place, and he's got a really cool voice. That's all that I knew. And he asked me if I'm okay, and I unloaded. I just let it all fly. I started to cry, and I just dumped it. I'm like, what am I doing? It probably was only 2 or 3 words, if I'm honest, but it felt like forever. It was probably only 2 or 3 words. But I just dumped it, and then I stood there, and it was silent. He looked at me. There was a long pause. I thought, oh crap. I I have now become one of those, and he's not going to talk to me again anymore, and you know, and this was it, and that's my one chance to meet him, and I was going to get him to come here to the casa and do something, and it's all blown and all this kind of stuff, and he just looked at me, and he hugged me, and he said, "It gets better." And he pulled me in, and he said, "It'll be okay. You'll be okay. God will pull you through. God will make this better. Don't lose hope." Now remember it. Every word. I'm pretty sure he said all of those. Even if he only said one of them, those were all the ones that I heard. I heard every one of those words. And they weren't coming from Trevor, they were coming from God. And so we talked for a long time now, and we just sat down and we talked about our journeys in drownings. And these moments when we were there, and then he had to go off to his session, and he reaches over into the OCP booth and he grabs a CD that I'm 100% sure he didn't pay for. So he probably owes OCP. And then he just handed it to me and he said, "There's a song that you need to listen to." And he told me what song it was and he gave me the CD. And I threw the CD in the car, I threw it in my bag, and I threw it in the car as we were leaving, and I didn't listen to it. Until I got to Life. And as you do on road trips back from California, you have to go to the bathroom and or stop at Popeye's Chicken. And I saw the CD sitting there, and I took it out, and I put it in, and I went right to the song. And I cried like a little baby. And that song became my prayer. It stayed on repeat. Probably, gosh, it had to have been an entire year at least, where that CD just never left my car. I didn't listen to anything else. There was a whole bunch of good music that came out that I had to catch up on later. But that was what I listened to, and that was the prayer. And just, let's pray together. Christ in me, arise and dispel all the darkness. Christ in me, arise with your power and your strength. Christ in me, pour out your blessing and healing. Christ in me, arise, and I shall rise with you. Be now my vision, open these eyes, showing me all that I must see. Onward to the kingdom, you are the way. Rise in me, and I shall rise with you. Christ in me, arise and dispel all darkness. Christ in me, arise with your power and your strength. Christ in me, pour out your blessing again. Christ in me, arise, and I shall rise with you. Be now my footsteps, leading the way. Christ in me arise and dispel all darkness. Christ in me arise with your power and your strength. Christ in me pour out your blessing and healings. Christ in me arise. Christ in me arise. Christ in me arise. And I shall rise with him. We all need that rescue. So let's just think about that gospel. Why did Peter drown? I'm asking. Why did Peter drown? What?
Doubted. No.
Doubted.
Fear.
What did Jesus say? Fear? What did Jesus say to him?
Faith.
You little faith.
You little faith, right? What did he have little faith in? What was his little faith in? Anybody? God? Zach said God. And that's kind of what you hear. Took his eyes off Jesus, started to sink. You hear that. And I'm not going to say that that's not what happened. But I am going to say that it seems to make much more sense that he lost faith in himself. He lost faith that he had been called out onto the water. He had lost faith that Christ was in him. That Christ had given him the ability to walk the waves. And I'm going to stand on what I hope is some solid foundation here and say that in the scripture, when he started to sink, he called out to Jesus. He called out to him. If he had lost his faith in Jesus, he wouldn't have known to call out. He called out to his God. He called out to his rescue. He never lost his faith in God. But he missed that God had called him, empowered him, was dwelling in him, and gave him the ability to walk those ways. That's what he missed. He forgot the call. The rescue starts with trusting Christ in us and calling on Christ to arise in us. God is always there, and he gives us that strength to walk the waves. He gives us the ability to weather the storms in our lives. Every single one of them, he gives that to us, and it is in us because of Christ. That is the power of this gospel. And it's the power that brings us to our rescue. There's a good friend of ours right now that's been drowning, kind of in a similar way. And thinking about my own journey, and I was thinking about what Trevor said. It gets better. At this point, anytime anybody goes to the life, that's what you're going to hear me say. If anybody's drowning in their life and you're coming to me and you're telling me about it, I'm going to be, it gets better, it's going to be okay. God will pull you through. You just have to find the rescue. That seems to be what I say about everybody. And so much so that I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Psalm 23, about, all these happy times and all this wonderful time. And what do you say when people are there and how do you help them get there? And I wrote a song, and I'm not saying that it was for this person or that it was even for anybody else other than me, to remind myself that it gets better all the time. Oh God, I've been once again. This go. In the darkness, help me trust again the words you say to me. It's better not lose hope. Hold on to me. Do not fear, you are not alone. I will walk this road with you. Trust me. I will show my mercy as we go. I know good has followed me all my days. You pursue me and paint with beautiful crooked lines your story through me. It gets better, don't lose hope. Hold on to me. Do not fear, you are not alone. I will walk this road with you. Trust in me. Make sure my mercy as we go. I will not leave you alone. The work I started in you has only just begun. It's better, don't lose hope. Hold on to me. Do not fear, you are not alone. I will walk this road with you. Trust me. Let me show my mercy as we go. Sometimes I think I worry that a lot of my faith, it's probably a silly worry, but it just seems like a lot of my faith is a regurgitation of the song that I'm singing, or the last thing I heard, or the last book that I read, and they all said it better than me. And so I think we look to those kind of voices, and I started with the silly Rich Mullins thing, and I'll just say that once again, there's a voice of Rich that kind of summed this up, and it was in the song, If I Stand. He says, if I stand, let me stand on the promise that you will pull me through. And if I can't, let me fall on the grace that first brought me to you. That's what this is. This is a cycle. We will forget. I hate to say it, we're going to forget. We're going to forget that Christ is in us. We're going to forget that He's called us out onto the waves. We're going to forget that He's given us that ability to weather all these storms. It's just going to happen, and it's going to come back and back and back and back and back. But we can't let that get us down, because that is why we come here. That is why we come to church. That is why we come to Mass. That is why we come to times of adoration, to be fed, to be reminded that Christ is in us, strengthening us, calling us again, feeding us to go out, back on that water. That's why we're here. Just like Peter, we need to call to Jesus in these times. When we forget, call out to Him in your fear. Come here. Come to church. Find that prayer place. Be in the Eucharist. Call to Him in your fear. In those times when those green pastures in Psalm 93 are all dead and gone and dry like That's when we come. And we find God. We remind ourselves that Christ lives in us. We encounter Christ here for that reminder. We're fed. And it's so much a part of how I made it through was this time. Being able to be here once a month to pray. To do this, that at some point I realized that we had this old logo and it didn't work, and I said, this isn't talking to what we are. And I never had the chance to share what we ended up doing. You've all seen it. But we started with this Trinity knot, and we said that that's what happens, that God's bound by love, and we're going to be a part of that, and we're going to come here, and we're going to see this, we're going to see the Trinity fully present. So you've all seen something like this, a Celtic Trinity knot. And I was talking to Frank, who ended up doing the logo design, and I was asking him, I said, this is what the night's about. Is there something else that we could do? Because we're a part of this. We're a part of this journey. We're a part of this Trinity. Through the Eucharist, we come here to be united with our God. And so, in his brilliant way, he put this logo together for us. And so not only is the night a reminder, I look at that and I think, this night's coming up. I look at it and I go, okay, there's a little reminder for us that we're a part of this. We're a part of this journey, and God's with us. God is in us. And so it's that Trinity and that element of us being united. Heaven has met earth here in the Eucharist. We're surrounded by everyone who's gone before us. Everyone who ever will be is right here at the table. In Mass, and what we do in the Eucharistic presence. And that's such a beautiful, beautiful gift. Because we come to be reassured of Christ alive in us. Because it does get better. I'm living proof of that. I stood right here. Adel stood right there on January 2nd. Right there, I'm reminded that God gets us through. We held on to Him. We were able to make the sacrament commitment. And I'm here now because I did what the bishop asked. But more so, we're here because that's where we want to be. Fully connected, fully a part of this experience, of this family, fully a part of the Eucharistic table of Mass, fully a part of all this. Because we are, and it never went away. Father Cyprian Consiglio said a line that ended up in that song that you just heard. At my friend's wedding, it was his third wedding to his high school sweetheart. And in his homily, he looked and he said, God paints in beautiful crooked lines. It wasn't a straight line that brought them back together. It was bent, it was broken. And God painted out of that a story. He wrote out of that a story. And it doesn't mean that there's never going to be another problem. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be relatively better than this moment or that moment that you found that first rescue. No. It doesn't mean these things. It can't. It can't. In the words of Vincini from The Princess Bride, not remotely. I always go to The Princess Bride. You beat my giant, which means you're exceptionally strong. So you could just build your own strength this week. And in doing so, you were poisons. I can clearly not choose the one in front of me. Anyways. It does mean that everything will be okay. It does mean that this cycle that happens sometimes daily, of walking out onto the water and drowning in the waves, God's with you through it. I have my family. I was able to adopt son number 3, Adel's, and now ours. It got better. There's plenty more drownings to come. I know it. But I know that if I trust in God, trust in what He's given me, and the gifts that He's given me, it'll get better. If we keep our faith in ourselves, in Christ in us, we can trust in that promise. And we can trust in that promise because St. Paul said it in the 8th chapter of Romans. We know that God causes all things to work for the good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. We know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. He called us. Whatever the waves, whatever the drownings happen, when any time that we have that happen, God will work together for good. He doesn't want it to happen. He doesn't wish bad things on you. He hasn't caused bad things to happen in your life. But He will use those and work them together. So let's go back out onto the